I really do think that part of that is not only looking at those 6 core competencies, but also continuously kind of reminding yourself these different strategies and surrounding yourself with fabulous women who lift you up and support you. And in that vein, actually, I would really love to talk about your podcast, which sounds like you're talking to some very interesting people. A poet and English teacher who was a big inspiration in your life.
Oh, yeah. So the name of my podcast is Heart to Heart. As the name suggests, the idea is to create a space where I'm really listening to people and asking the questions to learn from them. I think that there's a lot of advice out there, especially in the transformational space. You often see experts giving you 7 steps to never experience fear again. And I just go, hey, that's just not what it's like to be a human being. I don't know who's telling you that you're never going to be afraid again. It's just not going to happen. Just this idea that everything's going to happen perfectly, that perfectionism, I want to look at and explore a little bit, because I don't find that it is realistic or that it mirrors the nature of human beings. So the podcast is a way for me to have heart-to-heart conversations with incredible people, resilient people, but people who are talking about what makes them who they are, what wisdom and insights they have for being in these times and navigating challenges, and also, you know, some of the struggles that they've experienced and the values that they now live their lives according to. You know, good coaches, or at least the coaches that I like, bring out the wisdom in others, the gems and the greatness in others. So I wanted a space to really celebrate the people that I know, and that's what the podcast is about.
Oh, wonderful. It sounds so exciting. I can't wait to listen to it. I love that idea of there being lessons and kind of beauty in not being perfect. And in a lot of ways, that's what makes people interesting, is their mistakes. And I think there's a lot of really interesting commentary at the moment about women and kind of shame and the mistakes they made, and how, you know, how to get out from under shame, but also using your mistakes as lessons and as a springboard for success.
Yeah. You know, the reason you and I are having this conversation, the reason for this podcast, is that life is full on. It gets hard sometimes. And the best part of life is to turn to the people around us to find different forms of community that tells us that we're in this together. There's a person on the left, there's a person on the right, there are other women who are singing this song and having these struggles and moving through these questions. And that's the beauty of it. It's to not do this by ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that you've talked to me about, as well as the value of community. And the Women's Alumni Network with ANU is one of those communities that we're hoping to really foster and encourage and have inspire professional women going forward, and for us to come together and support each other.
Yeah. That's so beautiful. Anybody watching can be going through a range of things, and there's a temptation to be quiet about it, to not either seek support or to not really venture out beyond our own experience to share it.
Maybe it would be useful to chat a bit about the kind of different circumstances that women alumni might find themselves in at the moment. Yeah. And also that as we transition into a return to normality, how we can use those kind of 6 strategies to deal with those. Yeah. So the way I see it is, maybe there's kind of 2 different broad situations.
Yeah.
There's women who are maybe working from home and might live with housemates or on their own and feel a bit isolated, a bit disconnected from their friends and their social community. Yeah. And then there's also the kind of very opposite end of the spectrum, which can be people who are in big families or big households and are dealing with kind of all these extra stresses and a really busy, chaotic work from home life. Yeah. And I just wondered if you had insights about how to deal with those 2 extremes. Yeah. With those 6 core competencies.
Yeah, I feel like that's sort of the heart of what we're talking about today. I'll sort of split my thoughts into 2, as you suggested. So the first is this idea of, people who have experienced the brunt of this isolation, where they have been away from their families, where they have been away from their friends. Maybe they've seen the Uber delivery guy wearing masks, when we start to get in our own heads, we start to believe that everything we feel is the truth and it's going to last forever.
Which is terrifying.
So, I'm lonely. So again, if we don't have another perspective, we start to think I'm going to be lonely forever. So part of what we talked about is the self-awareness, which is I feel lonely now. I feel sad today. I feel like I want to see my friend. I miss my family. So really naming and being self-aware that this is what I feel or this is what you feel, that's going to help contain it and give it some perspective.
That sounds great. So instead of pushing those emotions aside and kind of pretending to be fine, you're saying, no, actually, I do feel sad. This is a terrible situation.
Yes. And I feel like, for people who are living by themselves, the empathy has to be turned inward and giving yourself that permission to be the third thing, which is authentic.
That's part of naming your emotions and saying, I'm not fine.
Yeah. I'm not. I feel sad and it's okay. There's a level of expression that goes with feeling that. And then when we talk about, say, emotional reasoning or self-management, to be honest, when you're feeling sad, it can be quite challenging to be emotionally reasoned. Because people are more in a survival mode. They go into just sort of getting through the day instead of, really reflecting on their feelings and their emotions. So what I want to encourage people is to go to the next one, which is your self-management. And the last one I said, which is empowerment, which is to not do this alone. Part of the self-care is, yes, it's the, creativity and the meditation, but sometimes you won't even feel like it. And when those moments happen, you need to reach out to someone. It can be a mentor, it can be a friend, it can be a community. The first thing to really do when you're in that place is to get out of your head.
That's the moment of, I've tried creativity, I've tried music, I've tried going for a run, and I still feel horrific. Call a friend, phone a friend.
Phone a friend, yeah. And I've had a few people reach out to me. It's like they don't feel like meditating right now because they're stressed and they're feeling these bigger emotions and they feel guilty about feeling these emotions. Human beings are social creatures. So the surefire way to break that pattern and to break that cycle is to interrupt it and call another person who can validate your experience and to share that with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so interesting, I think, having that feeling of, I'm grateful that I can self-isolate. I'm grateful that I'm safe. And so because I feel that gratitude, at the same time, if I feel lonely, it seems a bit selfish.
I'm so glad you said that, because that brings up a question of privilege. If we're privileged, are we still allowed to be sad?
When you say it like that, of course we are.
And it's like, are we still allowed to be human if we're privileged? And actually this reminds me, because you and I, we both love Jane Austen, Katherine. And around the time Jane Austen was writing Pride and Prejudice, there were a number of regional national wars going on. Because she was gaining some fame for her writings, she received a note from an angry general. This is part of her letters, by the way, which are fantastic. That was sort of really belittling her for writing about like marriage and romance at a time when wars were taking place. But I feel like something that's so beautiful about what she responds is that she writes what she knows. So she's in a place of integrity because she's honoring herself. And there isn't that sort of false sympathy. Like, she doesn't know what it's like to be at war.
Yeah.
And she gives herself permission to write about the worlds that she knows and to really honor herself in that space. And that gives her peace. And I feel like this issue when it comes to like privilege and gratitude and sadness, sometimes we do see it as dichotomous. It's like you're one or the other. It's like if you're privileged, you can never be sad and you have to be forever grateful. And I think that can create a lot of suffering when we discount and when we reject the emotions that we feel, which frankly are just human.
Absolutely. And most people aren't working on, world-changing issues either. But obviously all of us together make up the fabric of the world. So we're all important.
Absolutely. So, instead of this either or thinking, I want to invite everybody to make room for all of it and to not have this sort of relationship that anything's permanent. you feel grateful for a bit, and then you feel sad, and then you feel good again, and then something really great happens, and then something bad happens. If you're present with life, you'll experience all of it, I can assure you.
And that's the thing, right? Is that they always say the good things seem good in contrast to the bad things. Like, you need the whole spectrum.
Absolutely. So if there's a moment where you are grateful, go for it. If there's a sadness that comes, feel it. And maybe your gratitude will help you lift out of that sadness. And maybe your sadness will enrich the gratitude that you feel. Both, like you say, both inform each other. Both sort of add that color and depth to each other. And frankly, you and I, we're very privileged. We're cushy in our homes. We're able to work and pretty much have access to the things that we want. And when those emotions come up, it's important to find a way to navigate them.
Absolutely. And do you think that's something useful for people who are also kind of in a really busy household?
Oh, yeah. Because the flip side is, how everybody's saying like, this pandemic has been wonderful. I've been like journaling and looking inward, and my clients who are parents, they're like, oh yeah, the 5 minutes I've had in the toilet at 11 o'clock, that's been wonderful. Yeah. For a lot of women, they're making thousands of micro decisions now about homeschooling and children and the division of labor and all sorts of stuff happening in the household. This is a time, I feel like it's incredibly important to have that compassion and self-acceptance for women to be really clear. This is not going to be a perfect time where they're going to do everything perfectly. So I feel like perfectionism and productivity, we have to have a compassionate relationship with those things if you're making thousands of extra decisions on a given day.
That's so interesting, that concept of the mental load and how exhausting it is just to keep track of what everyone's doing and all the things on your to-do list.
Yeah. Right. And so going back to, the EI, the emotional intelligence framework, to be self-aware that, hey, I've got 1,000 things to do today. Yeah.
I'm not happy. I don't feel peaceful.
Yeah. It's like not really sort of copy pasting how you think you should be managing your day, but really sort of coming back to yourself and going, what do I want? What do I need? What do I want to feel? And sort of going back to a way that you can be guided by your own emotions throughout the day.
I love that feeling as well of like, you can kind of have two emotions at once. You can be grateful that you're safe and that your family are well and that you get to spend extra time with them, but they can still really annoy you. And you can feel really stressed and be grateful at the same time,
Yes. And I'm so sorry to quote a rom-com, but there's an iconic movie called How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. I think in one of the days she says, look, I love you, but I don't like you right now.
Yes. I feel like a lot of people would feel that with their families at the moment.
Like, you're human. And part of it is to bring things that will help you. So be it levity, whatever inner resources you've had to deal with other challenges in your life, I want to encourage everybody to bring that to the table. I'll ask you, Katherine, as an example, if you think back to say one of a challenging time in your life, what are some of the inner resources that helped you get through that moment?
Well, I actually love what you've said about that kind of this too shall pass thing of recognizing, yes, I feel this way in the moment, and there's no need to like removing the kind of guilt and the shame and this is a first world problem, and really putting that aside and being like, okay, well, maybe things are going to be bad for like 3 weeks. Maybe they'll be bad for 3 months, but on the other side, I'll still be myself. There are positive things at the end, because it is so true that you just sometimes sit with your feelings for too long and it feels like they will last forever.
Yeah, it's that relationship with, we think that things are going to be permanent, and sometimes it can be so helpful to just be like, if I'm just present with this, the gratitude's going to come. I'm going to get stressed again, but I'll feel grateful in between those two moments. And after that, I'll be excited about something, and then I'll be stressed about something. It's to accept that we're sort of in this tapestry, and it's not perfect, but we're all going through it, and we all have each other to help us go through it too.
Yeah, isn't that such a fascinating thing about this time, is that actually we're bonding across the world in a way that we never have before.
Yes, absolutely. And I found this great reframe the other day, like this idea of like, oh, we're just all staying home and we're isolated. If we think about it, another way to view it is, isn't this one of the greatest acts of solidarity? Look at the things we're giving up to protect the lives of complete strangers.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. Excellent reframing.
Right? Like, it's just, this idea of like, oh, I'm just going to sitting home and it's like, this is a gift. You're giving complete strangers the gift of not being ill, of protecting them, of protecting their families. This is an enormous act of generosity and courage. Like, we've shut down countries to protect complete strangers. Like, isn't that like, that's, there's love here. It's usually not the sadness that causes us suffering. It's the judgment. It's the feeling that we shouldn't be feeling sad. It's the feeling that we shouldn't be feeling whatever it is that we're feeling, which creates that suffering long term. So if we replace that judgment with acceptance, and you can feel it in your body as well. Like, if you're not judging yourself for everything that you're feeling, how are you showing up in your day? What's your day like? How's your day different?
Yeah, you'd be so much lighter and even just streamlined. Like, there's less mental load when you're not adding this extra layer of judgment over everything.
Yeah. To the single, the people who are at home by themselves, away from their families. So get out of your heads. Speak to somebody, because at the moment you think that what you believe is the truth. It's not. There are so many other meanings, other ways that you could phrase things, other things that you could say and feel and do. So reach out to somebody. That's what I would say. Pick up the phone, message someone. Like, out of your heads. Just at the moment you think that's the truth. It's not. Thousands of other truths out there about how you feel and what you can do. And to the people who are like really busy, it's to let go of that perfectionism, to replace the judgment, to replace all the unfinished tasks with a level of acceptance, and using some of the frameworks that we've talked about, for strategies as well.
That is such fantastic advice. I feel like my sense of self-judgment has lifted just as we've been talking. I feel lighter.
Good. Good. I love that. Yeah, I'm happy to hear that. That's really wonderful.
Well, I love this idea of your podcast. I'm really looking forward to listening further. Yeah. And hopefully that can be a way that, you can kind of keep this conversation going, and the comments maybe on this post would be a good way for people to reach out to you or talk to other alumni and really connect with the alumni community.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. I was going to tell you about some of the guests that I have. So yes. on my very first episode, I'm speaking with an incredible woman. She's an entrepreneur and a coach, but she started her career, winning fitness competitions and being a personal trainer. So she's also come from a very, very sort of competitive environment I would say in a traditionally like masculine, male dominated industry. And just her journey to be an entrepreneur, to still be a boss and a badass, but to do it in a way that is really authentic to who she is. That's been so wonderful. So that's one of the episodes. We talk about that, what it means to live your values. There's another one, as you said, she's a published poet. She's an author. She's also one of my old English teachers. And we talk about the beauty of ordinary moments. Nice. She says something so wonderful, which is, look, despite wars and famine, the ordinary is always there.
That's the Jane Austen thing again, right?
Absolutely.
We can all relate to the ordinary stuff.
Oh yeah. The beauty that you can find in a cup of tea, in nature, like that is always there. So it's this idea of noticing the generosity, noticing the gifts that are around us. And again, being in that state of gratitude and how it can really change your experience during a time like this.
That sounds so wonderful.
Yeah, and so many like cool guests. One of my guests, he traveled the world with like Tony Robbins and setting up his events. So it's a bit real about personal development. Brings forward an argument that it has to be real and it has to be practical so that it serves people in real life.
Yeah, not what you mentioned before, the 9 ways to never feel fear again kind of.
Yeah, so we're just like, while it definitely has its moments, it's like I know those moments where it feels really good to just do something far outside of your comfort zone. It also has to be balanced with a level of empathy and compassion. So we talk about, a balanced approach to coaching and transformation. That I think it's a really cool conversation as well. Today I spoke to like a relationship coach, and we talked a lot more about dating and, being around your partner and what it's like for single people and people in families. In the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be speaking to like a psychologist as well about like intergenerational emotions and, how you can separate yourself from what your family is going through to thrive and be yourself during these times. So lots of cool conversations coming up. I'm really excited about it. And I'd love for people to join in and hang out.
Oh, that sounds fantastic. Where do we find you? Where do we find your podcast?
The link will be below. It'll be on YouTube, but then you can also listen to it on Anchor and Stitcher and Spotify, all those places.
Oh my gosh, that's top of my to-do list now. It sounds amazing.
I'm so glad. Yeah. And I'm looking forward to having you on one of my episodes too.
Oh my gosh, stop it.
I'd love to talk more about models of leadership that can really help us during these times. So I'm really excited.
Yeah, I'd love to talk to you about that.
Love it.
Oh, well, thank you so much for your time today. It's been wonderful to chat.
Oh, thank you so much, Katherine. I'm so happy that you made this space for me to share this and also create a place for other women to connect with each other. So that's been wonderful.
It's fantastic. Hopefully we can keep the conversation going and get everyone talking. It should be great.
I would love for people to write in below. It's like, what are you struggling with? And what's one piece of insight that you took away from our conversation today that will really help you?
Oh, lovely. That sounds exciting.
I'd love to hear from people. It makes my day when I hear from people. Cut through the small talk and we're just talking about what's real and what's happening in our lives. So yeah, I'd love to hear from everyone.
That sounds fabulous. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Big virtual hugs.
Oh, thank you so much.
All right. I'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
And end.
Well done. The way you explained your podcast sounds friggin' awesome. It was so good. The way you talked about the different episodes and stuff, I was like, I literally want to go and listen to this right now.
I wanted to feel like people are eavesdropping. It is about life and it is about something timeless, because I think even after COVID goes, we're still going to be struggling with things. We'll still need to learn how to live our values and find the beauty in ordinary moments. So it's like a bit of an archive, but even after this time passes, I feel like it will be useful.
Absolutely.